Kay gave a talk to Jane Court's International Association of Health Dowsers I attended a few weeks ago, and I was very impressed with the presentation. And I thought this was the first talk we've had with the BSD this year, and I thought it'd be great to start this this year off then, as it were, with this talk from Kay. So, Kay, could you take over from me?
Yes, certainly, Richard, and thank you very much for coming back to me and inviting me to speak tonight to this group. It's wonderful, and thank you so much. So yes, my name is Kay Kraty. I'm a holistic practitioner. In fact, I think you've got my bio on the invitation, so I won't bore you with it anymore. But basically, one of my many hats is as esoteric numerologist. And so I give readings for people. I do Zoom stuff on relationships and on jobs and on houses and all sorts. But also every year since the year 2008, I have been doing forecasts. Forecast is the wrong word because it suggests some kind of prediction. Numerology is definitely not a prediction, so I need to make that clear. But I've been doing forecasts on an annual basis regarding the year ahead. And it's been interesting to note how the choices that we make from the energies that we supply, or that are supplied through the numbers of the year, how a lot of it has come to pass. So yes, as I said, the numerology aspect of it is not predictive. It just simply gives all the possibilities that come with the energies around the particular numbers that we're dealing with. So this year it's 2025. The main menu of this year is fast, is speed. It is really, really quick. And it's expansive, it's transformative, and it's volatile. Things start and finish almost leading into each other. So endings and beginnings, not linear, but kind of meshed together. Esoteric numerology asks for numbers to be read in a different way. When you write down 2025, you write it 2025. So you write from left to right. When I look at a number like 2025, I will read it energetically from right to left. I always start at the highest frequency, and the highest frequency is that number that you put down furthest away from the first one you wrote. So you would have written 2 as your first number, 5 is the last one you write. And so that 5 has a greater spiritual impact. And it has with it a spiritual soul connection. But to start with 2025, I need to take you back 5 years to 2020, because 2020 was when we moved from the 1 of the 2019 to the 2 of the 2020. We went from 2019 to 2020. So the 1 of that before the 19 did 100% increase. It moved from a 1 to a 2. And that indicates at that level a huge amount of speed. And you may have noticed things hotting up in 2020. What you will have also noticed is that 2020's got 2 zeros in it and 2 2s. The 0 counts for nothing in terms of its quality. It does have qualities, but it actually illuminates what is next to it. So of itself, it is nothing. So we're left in 2020 with 2 2s, the 22. And 22 of itself is a mirror number. Some people call these double digits. They call them power numbers or master numbers, but actually that's doing them a disservice, because vocally, by speaking something and denigrating the energy of it, you aren't opening up to its full potential. By calling a 22 or an 11 or a 33 a mirror number, you are helping and facilitating the energies to do exactly what they say on the tin, i.e. to act as a mirror. Now, you all know what happens when you put a mirror opposite another mirror facing each other, and then you look at them, and you can see forever, because one mirror is reflecting the other mirror, is reflecting the first, is reflecting the second, and on it goes. You just get this tunnel of light just opening up, and eternal in a sense. And so a mirror number does exactly that. It balances the digits that reflect all the qualities, and it creates endless possibilities and openings for the new to come in and for the light to come in. And in this case, for the 22, it's manifestation of change. Now, we all know what happened in 2020, right? The world came to a grinding halt globally. Everybody had to stop. And some people call it a global reset, but certainly it gave us all as humanity pause for thought. It gave us the opportunity to work out where we were and how to move forward with different challenges. The 22 is also known, it has a label. Some numbers have labels, and this is one of them. The 22 is also known as the master builder, and it refers to the ability of bringing spirituality into everyday matter, particularly through the self. In other words, self-mastery. And that is very transformational. It's very expansive. And it is to do with visionary. It's to do with being able to be honest, competent, disciplined, inspired. And it has this wonderful energy, the two, of waves. And so the waves also connect to the energy of water, emotion, and energy itself. So electricity, for instance. On the downside, because every number is a bit like standing in front of a large table full of plates of food. Each number, each digit presents you with a lot of dishes. It's up to you what you choose. The dishes are there. They have of themselves. The number itself doesn't say they're good or they're bad. It's our choices that, in effect, will bring forth whether something is positive or not. So the plus side of the 22 is this visionary, the honesty, the competency. The minus side is to do with lack of ethics, exploitative, reckless, risk-taking, greedy, ruthlessness, and ruthlessness around power and control. Generally, very unstable. And so this 22 energy that started in 2020, and by the way, will run all the way through the years until 2029, because we have that double 2 in the year number until then. It's to do with boundaries, closing boundaries, changing boundaries, and boundaries falling apart. And that can be to do with one's own behavior, one's own relationships, to do with corporate stuff, politics. It can do with all of that. From 2020 onwards, each subsequent year brought something extra to it. So 2020 went into 2021, 22, 23, 24, and we're now in 2025. And so in a sense, we're directly at the midpoint of this series, because if you were to write down, if you've all got pads, just try it to see, write down the numbers from 1 to 9, just normally on a line, and just write them in normal handwriting. And you will notice that there is a way that the numbers will change, will pivot. 1 is just the 1, but the 2, if you were to imagine each number to have a face or a front or a back, the 2 is looking at the 1, the 3 is looking at the 2, the 4 in a sense, is facing the 3, but the 5 faces the 6. So the 5 has this pivotal 180-degree spin that it changes, and so it adds to the speed of the year. And this year is already very speedy. It was already very speedy before we started. So 2025 has just given that extra flip of speed. The 5, which, as I mentioned before, is the soul urge of this number, it's the one that's the last digit you write down, is the turning point but for humanity and the planet to wake up to its spiritual calling. So it's very much about awakening, and an awakening, as we all know, can be pleasant, but it can also be a shock to the system. And perhaps that's what we are experiencing at the minute. It's a turning point for humanity and the planet, turning from materialism and greed and delusion to altruism, to sharing, and to truth, being real, being truthful. And on the plus side, because all numbers have a plus side and a minus side, they're like coins. They have both sides of the coin to make the coin. So the plus side is multisensory, adaptable, versatile, using the vibrations of sounds and words to amplify. But on the minus side, it's unpredictable, addictive, disliking commitment, huge potential for procrastination, no self-discipline whatsoever, and very wild and reckless. Certainly very rebellious. And we've seen rebellious energy, where in March now, we've had a couple of months, we've seen that all over the globe. There's a lot of almost revolutionary energy going on. So that's very typical of the 5 in its wild card situation. That said, in this position, the spiritual aspect of the 5 is wanting us to change. And if we can't change by, being polite, then we're going to have the sledgehammer in order to make a change. And so the 5 is trying to push us up, push up our consciousness. And in a sense, many of us, many people feel pushed beyond their limits. And that produces an effect which I'm sure we all know, that people want to opt out. They want to opt out of the rat race. They want to opt out of social media. Some of them, sadly, want to opt out of life, but they want to go away and process whatever it is, in a sense, in solitude, which is fine, but we live on the planet. We need to be part of the planet. We need to, in order to keep a handle on what's going on and to help the planet and each other, we do need to keep one foot in everyday life, in a sense. So that's the 5. And now we move to the 2, or what it is, the 20, because we say 25, don't we? So it's 20. The 20 is a feminine energy. It's creative. It's the feminine energetic impulse, the holding space for the masculine impulse to action, to do whatever it needs to do to be effective in its action. But as it's a new number, and I mentioned before when I was talking about 2020, the year 2020, and previous year being 2019, and then the next year is 100%, up, the 20 is quite tentative, because previous to being a 20, it was a 19. So it's had to make a huge shift in its energetic kind of distribution. And so as such, it can be quite tentative, quite unsure, quite sensitive. And again, it needs to uplift its energy in order to become and demonstrate equality, balance, and the survival instinct, which the feminine will hold. On the downside, it can be fearful, it can be doubtful, it can be quick to react, quick to judge, quick to blame. Remembering always that the two, whether it comes as a 20, a 22, whatever it comes, but the two per se is connected to waves, the waves of emotion, the waves of water, the waves of energy. So the waves and the flow of these waves. And the waves coursing through us, but they also course through the earth, the planet, the rock we live on. At the level of a 2, it's much the same as the 20, but we take that slightly more prosaic look. It's to do with unity consciousness. We've moved from 1, which is I and me, to 2, which is us, together. And it's unity. It's supportive. That said, on the minus side, if a 2 is feeling down and negative, it will revert back to being egocentric, weak, fearful, and depressed. So we've looked at the 5, we looked at the 20 and the 2. We're now going to look at the 25 as a whole. We're still in this spiritual sector, if you like, of 2025. The 25 has a label called birth of consciousness, so becoming conscious of. And what we're becoming conscious of is the multidimensional aspect of who we are as humans, as human beings, as humanity. We are not just the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, the soul. We have many other abilities. We have, beyond the physical and the emotional, we have the ability to have intuition. We have the ability, back in the day, many generations and perhaps centuries ago, to move things with the mind, psychokinesis, things like that, which we tend to poo-poo now because we are so left brain oriented. We're so fixed on logic and rational and proof that it's a struggle for the right hemisphere of the brain to come out and demonstrate what it can do. But this is the year, ideally, when we are bringing all our abilities together. And so it's through thought, through feelings, through our vibration, through our senses, multi-sensory. That said, because it's such a new thing and because there is no proof, if you like, it can be very unstable. The energy around it can be unstable if it's not trusted. And so quickly, the potential is to give way to the lower emotions. The lower emotions, anger, greed, fear, divisive extremes, polarity and duality consciousness. And again, I think we've seen that, and all of these things can work, as it were, together. It's not either or. It's not like a light switch on or off. It's a melding, a blending of everything. So we might see it within ourselves that one minute we're fine with something and the next minute we're questioning it because, we are struggling with that balance, keeping our balance, trying to stay in the center. Again, the birth of consciousness is about mastering the emotions, the choice to be aware and the choice to watch and witness the emotions we have in order to control them. And it is important that we have those emotions. We're human. We need the emotions. We need to vent every now and again. But the problem is that we mustn't live there. We mustn't stay there. We need to be able to detach. It's important also to develop trust in our non-physical connections and to try and, I was going to say, experiment with them. So telepathy, I'm sure we've all had, times when we reached to the phone only for somebody who we thought we were phoning us. all of that tends to happen, but this is happening now more, where you almost can think what the other person is thinking, which of course begs the question that we need to look at the quality of our thinking, because we don't want, negative thinking to go elsewhere. We need to therefore monitor that. So again, it's like a self-discipline on the emotional front, on the thought process, on what we color our thoughts with emotionally. It is literally birth of consciousness. We could say it's birthing that 25. It is birthing a new episode for humanity. It sounds a bit grandiose, but in a sense, that's what this year is the start of. It won't all happen at once. Even 12 months is not very long time, but it will incrementally increase in its effect. So although we're probably going to be doing this for quite a few years, it's going to start with a bang. So the 25 reduces, because in numerology everything is always reduces to a 7. And the 7 from the 25 is about awakening the spiritual self. It's the light of truth, revealing all the hidden stuff, all the stuff that down the generations, down the ages, down this lifetime, down the last few months or the last few years, everything that's been suppressed, depressed, hidden, secrets, lies, buried. And it's for those things to come up, to be transmuted, to be looked at, to be dealt with, to be transmuted. Ideally. Or, as many would prefer, is to behave like an ostrich and stick your head in the sand and ignore it. And that then, if that happens, just creates more chaos and more madness, because we need to bring this up, we need to transmute it, we need to start with a clean slate. On the plus side, this 7 is insightful, intuitive. It's very much about whole brain thinking. Remember that it's a 7, so those of you who are familiar with chakras will understand that this is very much the crown chakra, so it's the left and right brain hemisphere. It's whole brain thinking. It's pragmatic. On the minus side, it's depressive, confused, psychotic, because again, that's where psychosis tends to manifest. It's in the mind and the brain. And it's about mental anguish. Very much to do with overwhelm, things like who am I and what's going on and what's happened in terms of life and how are we going to move forward. So all these numbers and all these qualities I've spoken about the last half hour or so, we are now coming up to the 0. Now, the idea is that whenever you have more than one digit and you have a 0 in the lineup, so probably 3 digits or more, 3 numbers or more, the 0 acts as a bridge, as a lens that requires all the previous things, the higher vibratory frequency numbers, to pass through in order to land, if you will, on the most earthbound frequency, which in our case will be the 2, the first 2 you write down of 2025, so the first 2. But we're at the lens, and the lens what has to pass through the lens now is quite a lot. So the 5 has to go through, the 20 has to go through, the 2 has to go through, the 25 has to go through, and the 7 has to go through. And all those qualities are compressed and squished through, a bit like a mincing machine. They have to go through this lens to increase their impact on the physical plane. And it comes out as a sort of conglomerate of all of the qualities, but in very much a more mundane fashion. And for those of us who are in that zero energy, and it has an impact on us as well, it can very much also manifest as though we're feeling as if we're living in a void, in a vacuum. Because we're not sure of how to move forward, we're not sure of where we are. So although time is speeding up ever faster, it appears, it leaves us somewhat rudderless occasionally, and that doesn't help with the feelings of overwhelm and fear and everything else that manifest. This lens magnifies all these things I've talked about, but it also brings things down to a generalization, and it dissolves things. And so we're also talking about dissolution of old structures. We're also talking about those structures. It can be family structures, it can be relationships, it can be corporates, financial structures, political, socio-economic, global structures. All of those are part of what needs to be dissolved in order for them to be true. If they're true in the first place, no problem. But if there is that element of the secrets, lies, buried stuff, then that will come to the fore to be purified, to be transmuted. So we're now on to the last two digits, which are the first ones, the first two digits you write down when you write 2025, and it's the 2 and the 0. So we're looking at the 20 as a number. And it's much like I said before about the 20, but this time, this 20 is very much in the everyday field. It's feet on the ground, it's 3D, 4D, whatever you think you live in, but it's that level. And so it's the wave energy, it's emotion, it's water in all its capacities, whether it's a leak in your downstairs loo, or whether it's a flood, or there is rainfall, or whatever it is. And also energy. And the energy is very much to do with the illusionary aspect of money and the energy exchange. So we're talking things that like Bitcoin, we're talking things like bank transfers, we're talking those sort of things that don't have a handle, a physical thing that you can hold on to, that they're fine, but just the idea is to be careful, because the waves that are forming with that 20, with the previous 20 I talked about at the different level, and just generally because everything is dissolving so much and changing shape so much, it's really important perhaps also to keep a few notes in a little box somewhere. So if the power outages happen for a day or two, you can still buy your bottle of milk. So it's kind of making sure you've got all bases covered. On the minus side, because this number, again, is so new, and I've mentioned before, it's that 100% increase from the 19, it's super sensitive, volatile, aggressive, reactive, unstable, judgmental, defensive, and it will often go to violence to cover up fear. This is at the physical level, and anything that at the physical level becomes even more so, because it's usually driven by fear, and so that then becomes quite a thing. On the plus side, the 20 is bountiful. It has huge, huge potential to create. But then what is it going to create? Some people will say what it creates is good. Some people will say it's not so good. Will it create order? Will it create chaos? That is how we then translate and use the energies that are offered to us through this number. It's not the number itself that will do the damage. It's how we choose to deliver and to act on it. When I say we, I'm talking humanity, obviously, not just this group. So then we come to the first number you write down, which is the 2. The 2 of 2025. This label on this one is the ray of love and wisdom. It is about self-mastery on the emotional plane. And it's very much to do with self-discipline. The self-discipline is very simple. It's about not going into drama, not going into fear or judgment, and not jumping onto bandwagons. In other words, make up your own mind whether something's good or bad. Don't just do it because your neighbor's doing it or because your group on WhatsApp's doing it or whatever. So it is having discernment. And a watchword of 2025 is very much that. It's one of the key words, discernment. Discern what is right. Discern what to do next. And that means sometimes taking a step back and counting to 5 as you decide and bring in your discernment. But that is for the good, because then you are happy with the choice you've made. On the plus side is you feel and acknowledge the emotions. I mentioned that before. You acknowledge whatever you're feeling because you're human without attachment to them. So if something has angered you, go to the bottom of the garden and shout, or, have a stress ball and throw it at somebody. But it basically get it out of your system because we're human, but don't hold on to it. So give yourself 10 minutes to get rid of it and then say, right, enough, and then move on, and don't hold on to that negative feeling, because all it will do is lower your vibration. And in lowering the vibration, you let in fear, you let in doubt, you let in all sorts. Plus, lowering your vibration has an after effect. It lowers the vibration. It has an effect on people in the same room, in the same house, and on the planet. I mean, we all have a responsibility to try and keep our vibration as high as possible. Holding on to anything, if you're going to hold on to anything, hold on to unity consciousness, hold on to balance and harmony. And that's also very much to do with the 2. In terms of the downside of the 2, it's indecisive, it's fearful, it's very much pointing the finger at others. Everybody else is always to blame. It's never me. It's dependent and codependent, and it can be very much having a degree of mob consciousness. So again, not making up the mind for the self. What I would say about 2025 is that there are so many 2s in it. There is such a fast energy. And there is so much change that one of the emotions I think we are seeing a lot of, and we are feeling ourselves, and sometimes not even understanding why, is there is a lot of grief in 2025 in the energies. Grief at the loss of the past, for the older generation, grief of loss of old ways, of old freedoms, of innocence, the way we were isn't possible to be anymore. But I notice it with the younger ones too. I notice it with my young grandkids that they were around before the pandemic, and they are saying, well, it's, we've lost time, we've lost social interaction, we've lost schooling, we've lost the ability to bond with people. And so there's that sort of grieving, which is something that needs to be allowed, because in a sense, the grief that comes from that is a purification. So it is something that we can expect. So I've looked at the component parts of 2025, the ingredients, if you will. I'm now going to gather all these energies together and look at a different aspect using the same numbers, but putting them differently to give a better synopsis. So I'm gathering the energies together, and the first gathering I'm going to do is 20 plus 25. So that gives me 45. it still comes out as a 9. We'll discuss the 9 at the end. But it's the highest frequency that I can get comfortably from this number 2025. You could say to me, well, why aren't you doing it differently? Why don't you do 202 plus 5, which makes 209? Because even a 45, a 2-digit number, is of such high frequency that it's difficult to pin down and bring down the qualities. Anything with 3 digits, it's really difficult. So you have to try and make it understandable. So the 45, it's about teaching and demonstrating through experience. So in a sense, it's like talking your walk. We all know about walking your talk. Well, this is the other way around. It's talking your walk. You've walked it, you've known it, you've done it, you've got the T-shirt, you've written the book, you've woven the T-shirt even. But now you are in the position of sharing with anybody else how to do it, because you've absolutely been there. You understand the process because you've done it. And so you come from an authenticity, which is really, really important. So that is the 45, the teaching and demonstrating through experience in order to help to give service to the planet and humanity. And how? Through truth and reality. So this is about it's about the reality rather than the illusion. It's about the reality rather than the falsehood. The fast energy of the 5 of the 45, we have another 5 in here. It's hidden, but there it is. It's a 45. So again, we have that flip, that additional speed that comes from that. And it comes through the structure of the 4. And the 4 is about keeping it real, keeping it grounded, losing the fantasy, losing the glamour, if you will, and losing the pretense and illusion and falsehood. And for some people, that's really painful because, for all of us, we have a persona. We tend not to go and be totally who we are with our families. Perhaps we do, but when we go out in the world, when we go and do our jobs, or whatever it is, we tend to sort of, we put a persona on. And in a sense, it's get rid of that too. Be as real as you can. Be as authentic as you can. And that takes courage. And the courage is to see life and the self as it really is. And we are all messy and primitive, and we all go to fear as a default. But if we go to fear, it's the challenge then is to say, okay, I'm going to fear. Hang on a minute, count to 5, take a deep breath, come out of fear, don't hold on to it, and now trust, if we can. It's about, this courage is about going within, finding the truth of the self, and finding the hero inside ourselves. I know there's a song, I think, something like that, but it is literally finding your own hero and activating it. The plus side of this 45 is endurance, patience, and honesty. The minus is lack of confidence, lack of self-belief, and allowing fear to take over. And we get with fear very often, there is that fear and there comes to a threshold, and we can either tip ourselves completely into it or we can step back. And the challenge is to have enough trust in ourselves and the universe to take that step back and say, okay, I felt it. I know this is not a good place, but let's just see how we can navigate it. Okay, so that was the first interpretation of 2025. There's a second, which is actually it's divided into 2. So the first of this next interpretation is 20 plus 2 plus 5. The emphasis is on the bigger number, so that would be the more mundane, the physical number. And the second one would be 2 plus 0 plus 25, where the emphasis is on the spiritual aspect of this number. Both of them are about the birth of wisdom. The physical one, which is 20 plus 2 plus 5, the emphasis is on the mundane wisdom, the daily tasks, the daily decisions, how we carry on in life, and the wisdom perhaps to step back from judgment and step back from blame. Give people the benefit of the doubt. You don't know what their backstory is. I was in a tube not very long ago in London, and I got on at a sort of fairly empty station. I got a fairly empty train, and I was in there, and there were a couple of kids, quite young children, and what appeared to be their father, and the kids were running around in the train as it was going, and then gradually every stop, and then more people came in. And at the end, it was quite full, and the children were still running around, and somebody sort of muttered something like, "Can't you keep those children in control?" Anyway, the guy looked up and just said, "What do you want me to do? Their mum's just died." And you could have heard a pin drop, because we don't know why certain people are behaving in certain ways. So give them the benefit of the doubt. And if push comes to shove, invent a story. Invent something that allows you to step back from the judgment, from the blame, and be kind and be patient. So the other side of this particular 27-9 is, like I said, the emphasis on the spiritual wisdom, 2 plus 0 plus 25. And that is what the soul is urging us to do and to become. And what is it trying to do? The birth of wisdom through feeling and through changing our inner technology regarding feeling. And how do we do that? We change the organs that we associate with certain things. We tend to think that we think with the mind. We tend to think that we feel with the heart. So swap it over. Think with the heart, feel with the mind. It allows us to become more heart-centered, and that's something that can only benefit us all, and it can benefit our interactions with others, it can benefit the planet. And doing that, thinking with the heart, feeling with the mind, it's applying wisdom with great feeling at all levels. The downside of this scenario of the birth of wisdom is that there is too much. So one can get over-passionate, tyrannical, lack of trust in the self, and that energy can go inwards so that people feel deeply hurt and they become victims, so they step into victimhood. So 45 and 27 both reduce to 9, 4 plus 5, 2 plus 7. But if I were to ask most people who don't know much about numerology, but they do know that you reduce numbers, if I were to say, what is 2025? Most people would say, oh, it's a 9, because what you do is 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9. So they come to that 9 with only 4 ingredients, which are single numbers. They haven't gone anywhere near to what we have been discussing this evening. And then they usually say, oh, and that's completion, because we started at 1, we've finish at 9, end of. Well, the 9 is never a completion, because the 9 is a springboard for going into a 10. It's always going upwards. Every year has all the energies, all the previous years in it. All numbers have all the energies of previous numbers in them. So even if you have a 9, it has everything in it from 1 to 9. all those energies, and it's then ready to springboard into the 10, which we will meet next year when we're going to 2026. That's a 10, it will reduce to a 1, but it will have the qualities of the 10 in it. So it's really important to understand that 9, therefore, is the preparation for the start of transformation and an increase in energetic levels. And so the 9 is very much, again, about speeding things up. It's looking beyond itself to the next platform. Of itself, the 9 has the label of selfless service. And that's about selfless service as we step up into a higher vibration. And you might say, well, that sounds very highfalutin, and, do we all need halos? No, we don't. We just need to do what we do for others. It's a bit like, demonstrating host behavior. It's making sure that everyone is comfortable, that everybody's okay. It's putting the attention on others rather than on the self. And a really good example today of selfless service was the person who made me a cup of coffee, a barista. And they made it with concentration, with focus. They didn't talk. They were looking at what they did. They obviously enjoyed their art, which it is. So it's somebody who comes and cleans your table because they have seen that the table is dirty and it needs sorting out, and you don't want to have your elbows in, I don't know, in whatever, some food was spilt on it before. So it's that sort of mentality. It's looking after other people, selfless service. And that requires faith in that what you're doing is good. And that brings us to the Greek pistis sophia, which is the faith in wisdom, having faith in wisdom, and then also understanding that the wisdom, having wisdom in faith. So it's the other side of it as well. Exploring all that is false, everything that doesn't work, the lies, the propaganda, we've had it through centuries, we've had it through many years, bringing all that to light. And that in itself, as part of the work of the 9, will produce uprisings, and will produce uprisings against old injustices, which, again, of itself will produce polarization, because as much as there are groups in the world and in this country and maybe in your town or village or wherever it is, who want to change certain things, there'll be the other side, the other groups who don't want to change because they want to have everything stay as it is. They're not comfortable with that. And so that creates the increase of polarization, and that also then magnifies the imbalance of mind and emotion. On the minus side, this is self-service, it's unethical, faithlessness, and deep confusion, avoidance, holding on to the old ways, and the result of that being chaos and turbulence. So as much as we are going through all of this, we mustn't forget the Earth also is going through this. The planet we're living on, we have our being on. The Earth also is shaking off the old. In 2025, this year specifically, it's been happening more and more, but very much in this year, the Earth is very much about redefining itself, herself, if you will. When I first did a similar talk on the 3rd of January, I was listing all sorts of earthquakes that were happening. I've stopped listing them because you've only got to go and Google it and you will see for yourselves. Quakes, landslides, floods, fires, cyclones. Why? Because the water element of the 2, there is that and the wind element, which is around the 9 and the 5. So those two are very much prevalent to create the floods, three numbers, to create the floods and to create the turbulence and the wind aspect. And the higher aspect of that wind is in the 9 and the 5. It brings air into Earth. It brings air from space into Earth. So not necessarily we can see comets, we can see meteors, energies from outer space, but also energies from outer space through the geomagnetic storms that this planet is prone to. When I first started these talks in 2008, you'd be lucky to talk about a CME, a coronal mass ejection, maybe 2 or 3 a month, maybe a couple a year. They were few and far between. Now there's 2 or 3 a week and sometimes more than 1 a day. And so we're talking solar flares, mass ejections, particles in the atmosphere, and the geomagnetic storms create a weakness in the magnetic shield that this planet of ours holds us in. And because this shield is weaker, the particles from the sun and from space come further into our atmosphere, and they affect us as humans, they affect our pets, they affect the planet. And so it's not surprising then that we have headaches and mood swings, and that we have pets who suddenly turn around and bite us, or whose behavior, fish who beach themselves, birds that change direction. Everything is on a change, on a course change. Again, it's useful to look this up if anyone's interested. There's a really good, the NASA space website is really good, spaceweather.com. Will give you all of this anyway. But we have something else going on for us on this planet, which is the Schumann resonance, which is the actual hertz sound frequency, if you will, that the planet emits constantly. Again, back in the day, many, many moons ago, there was a constancy to this. It was always 7.8. It then went up to 7.83. And nowadays, and for the past couple of years, there's been a huge swing. But certainly at the beginning of this year, when I looked on the website, it was swinging on that particular day, which I think was the 9th of January. I can't remember whether it was the 3rd or the 9th, between 783 to 33.8 hertz. Now, we don't hear that because it's too low in tone, but we feel it. It's a bit like if you're standing in front of a speaker, you will feel it through your body. One of my hats is sound bars, and I do gong bars. And I have a profoundly deaf client who comes and lies down and feels the vibration through her body of the sounds I make with my gongs. So that is coming to us through the earth and up our bodies. And so it's not surprising that we're all a little bit at 6s and 7s. So humanity's imbalance also affects the earth. Our negativity, our wars, our disagreements, our fights with each other, whether it's social or whether it's in a relationship, again, it lowers our vibration. And ideally, we need to keep it high for each other, for our planet. So to help ourselves, it's good to be cognizant of how we operate on a daily basis and to be careful what we give power to. Now, that can be social media, obviously, but it can also be thoughts and speech and action. And yes, we're human, and so obviously sometimes we're going to say something we wished we hadn't. So a good get out for this is, and you might want to write this down, when you say something or think something that you want to retract and you don't think it's good karma to have let that loose, that the consequence wouldn't have been too good, then use what you use on your computer. Cancel, delete, and clear. Cancel that thought, delete that thought, clear that thought from my history. The footprint will still be out there, but what you have taken back is the energetic intention, which was the thing that is harmful in the first place. So cancel, delete, and clear. And that voids the unwanted thought, speech, or action. How we experience things is defined by our own inner state. And so discernment and taking responsibility for our own state, being aware of the emotions, choosing how to feel and what to let go of, and feeling that power of being able to do that, because the only time we have got that power is in the now. We haven't got power yesterday. We haven't got power in the tomorrow. We only have power now to make those choices now. So, synopsis or a recap in 2 sentences. 2025, on the plus side, hugely creative, hugely cooperative, lots of innovation, lots of new ways of being and communicating, AI. Some of it can be completely frustrating, but some of it is brilliant. And as we go through and the technology gets better, it will be more and more brilliant. There are many pitfalls, but generally, let's go in the right direction. On the downside, chaotic, noisy, unstable, and very fast, which has the potential, of course, to trigger, for many people, the lower emotions. But generally, I would say 2025 is exciting. That said, and before I'm taking questions, I just want to give you something, because I've given you a few things. I've certainly given you the cancel, delete, and clear as a useful tool. I'd like to leave you with a useful tool that you can use every day. Takes 5 minutes, and you don't need any invocations, mantras, bits and pieces. It's just you, because this is about the breath. It's called the baby belly breath, and it's a yogic exercise, but very useful for everybody. So can I just ask that everybody just pops their pen down and we just do this together? So I just want to ask you to check in how you're feeling right now for yourselves. Just check how you feel, and then just close the eyes and put the hands on the lap. Your total focus needs to be on the breath. Now, when you do this exercise for yourself, obviously, hopefully it'll become muscle memory and you won't need to close the eyes. It will be fine. But for the moment, because this is probably the first time you're doing it, please just close the eyes to help you focus on the breath. And you're just going to breathe as per normal, nothing special. You breathe and you just make a note of how far down that breath goes. And usually it goes to the top of the lungs, and then it comes back out again. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is to breathe a little further so that you can drop the breath further into the belly. And the belly would be past your navel, so it will be your abdomen. Drop the breath down there, do it incrementally, a little bit at a time, so that finally, after a few breaths, the breath is going all the way down to the stomach, to the abdomen. And you might notice that as you're doing this, because the breath is traveling further, going further down, the rate and rhythm of the breath is changing. And so it's becoming slower and more steady. And that gives you a sense of it's a little bit steadier, it's calmer. Keep that breath in and out simple and soft and gentle. Don't push it and don't force it, but allow the breath to go as far as the belly as you can and to naturally slow down. And now allow the out breath to be slightly longer than the in-breath. So you breathe in all the way down to the abdomen, and then the out-breath slightly longer than the in-breath. And go at your own pace. It doesn't matter what pace that is. Again, in all the way down and out slightly longer. And after a few minutes of doing that, allow your breath to pause after the out-breath. So you go in all the way down to the belly, out slightly longer, and pause just for a second. And now you go in again all the way down, out slightly longer, and pause. But try now to extend that pause just a little bit more, just for a few seconds. Each breath extending that pause at the end of the out-breath. And note how that feels in the pause. It can feel peaceful and calm, and how soothing it feels to be in that nothingness. Because you soon again are going to breathe in all the way down, breathe out a little longer, and pause. And as you keep trying to extend that pause, let me tell you about that pause, what it's doing. The pause is the 0 point. It's the point where all natural healing occurs, the point of your power. Because what's been happening in that pause is it allows the stem cells to release and to start their healing process in the body. This particular form of breathing is what we do when we're asleep. And it's called the baby belly breath exercise because it's exactly like babies breathe when they're asleep. They're lying on their back, and the rib cage is hardly moving at all, but the stomach, the belly, is going up and down and up and down. And so it is for us. When we're stressed, we tend to breathe faster and more shallowly. And so emotion is driving the breath. But now, doing this, in this exercise, the breath is driving the emotion. It's slowing everything down. It's making you and helping you feel less stressed. And it's doing that because it's also having an effect physiologically. The biomarkers in your blood, the things that deal with stress, reduce through this breathing. The cortisol levels that are connected to our fight and flight mechanism, the autonomic response, they come down. So our immunity is boosted, our energy is boosted, even in the short time we've done this exercise, which is about 5 to 6 minutes now. And so, yes, when the breath drives the emotion, we become masters of our emotion. No mantras, no rituals, no nothing. It just happens. So if you'd like to come back and breathe normally now, and when you are back in your seat, then open your eyes and please have a drink. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Any observations, anything you'd like to share, please do that. So Richard, I don't know if you, does anybody want to ask anything? Because they might have to unmute themselves, or whether you have to do that, Richard, I don't know. I can't hear you, you've muted. Okay.
There we are.
That's better.
People can put their hands up, the little icon, if they want to ask a question or...
Okay. Yes, Ali. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Hello, thank you.
Hello.
Quite an achievement to talk about 2025 for an hour and 15 minutes. That was... my question is much more urbane than everything that you said, but number 4, we were writing out the numbers, like you said, and you said how 2 was facing 1 and 3 was facing 2. And I think when you were describing 4, there was a, you said it could be seen as facing 3. But before you said that, I was thinking, oh, it's facing number 5.
Well, it depends, obviously, how you write it. I appreciate. The way I was taught and the way a lot of people write it is where it's sort of, in a sense, looking either up or it's looking at the previous number. So I don't know how you write yours, but it's simply giving a symbology to the numbers where the 5 direction is definitely changing, and that is then emphasized by the quality of the 5, because that's very much the swing into something completely new, which the 4 doesn't do. The 4 is like a square, it's a box, and sometimes how we write the 4 is also a bit like a box.
I get you. Yeah, 5 is more open.
Yes, absolutely. And it's kind of pointing the other way.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if that answered anything, but...
I think so. And as you say, it's all about discernment and interpretation.
It's interpretation, it's discernment. The bottom line is that the 5 energy definitely has that speed quality to it.
Yeah.
But thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to ask anything? Yes, Avril.
Okay, that was fascinating. Thank you. I'm just wondering, do we individually have a whole life number? Because Ali has just reminded me that from the age of 4, from a very young age, the number 4, I knew it was my number, my lucky number, and it's continued all through life. But some other numbers became added to it: 16, 4 and 16 and 7, and latterly 9. But certainly at the beginning, it was strongly number 4.
It can, of course. I mean, it's absolutely. It's not something necessarily I want to go in at the moment, if you don't mind, simply because it's a personal thing. Okay, and yes, we're talking about the energy of the year rather than specific numbers to do with your birth, to do with your date of birth, your name as it appears on the birth certificate, the time of day you were born, where you were born. All of those things have an indication. But yes, as a quick answer, absolutely. If you felt 4 had a meaning for you, then there's probably a reason, a very good one, hidden in your numerology that would suggest, that would support that.
Yes, thank you.
See, Linda
Anyone
Russell.
else?
Linda Russell has her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, can't see. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, that was absolutely fascinating. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Similar to the question before, does your birth date, the year that you were born, etc., that would have an influence on the 2025, yes?
Yes, absolutely. And well done for spotting it. It will. Particularly as the year we're born in invariably it tends to produce challenges. The numbers tend to produce the challenges in our birth chart. So challenges are good. They help us grow. But there will have an influence, and it has a small indication. Some people ride 2025 better because of their own lineup. But obviously I can't, we've got over, I don't know how many people here. It's really hard to factor that in. I can just talk about the year energy by itself, as it were. But yeah, you're quite right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Kay. Sorry, couldn't find my icon. Melanie.
Hi. Oh, hi, Melanie. Yes.
Hi. I read the tarot, and we use a lot of numerology. Well, numbers. The numbers are very important in astrology, in the tarot. And the 5 is always seen as it's really, really destructive or transformative, like you said. So it's interesting there's that correlation. I don't know whether that's just because it's a number, but I always see it as kind of negative female energy. I know that sounds terrible coming from a woman, but it's always something that changes things rather than lets it go. It mixes things up and makes them transform, like you were saying. It's exactly the same in the tarot.
Yes, it's in numerology, the 5 has this wildness about it. If a child, if you have a lot of 5 energy around you, a child has a lot of 5, it's the sort of energy that, a child, you can say to a child, don't touch the iron, it's hot. They won't believe it. They'll go out and touch it to prove it's hot. It's that sort of, I need to check it out for myself. I don't just want to be told. So there is that sense of, but that's no bad thing occasionally. It has that wanting to check, and it's also very linked to study. It's very linked to intellect. So it's higher mind as well. So there's a lot of seemingly extremely good stuff about 5, but in this context, as we're talking with the year, it's the speed, and it's that speed that is pushing us, whether we like it or not. It's like standing in a storm and a very strong wind is going to push us to move, whether we want to or not. We can hang on to a lamppost, but that lamppost is probably going to blow off as well. So that's it, So yeah.
I totally agree with that. But I live in Southern Ireland, and we had the hurricane force here on the on the west coast where I live, the worst, and it totally changed everybody here.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever had a hurricane in Ireland before. It's as you said, everything is so different. And the wind, especially, has been a big pushing. So
and that's the 9 also has that air element to it. So we've got double whammy in a sense. Sorry, but that goes for all of us. Wherever we live.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Thank you so much for your talk.
Pleasure. Thank you, Melanie. Anyone else? Then if not, then I think Richard.
Yes, I did, Kay, I did ask at the last meeting I saw you how we could read up on the work that you do, but I think you said there are no books available.
Yes, very few books available on it because they tend to do the simplistic. I'm a bit derogatory about it, but they tend to sort of do the end of peer stuff, and it's really not that. It's not a predictive art. It is an art and a science. There is mathematics involved as well. So no, it's a hard one. But I trained with a 3-year course at the Renaissance School, and even their stuff is all kind of hand done and handwritten because it's what has been brought through. So we're talking the Blavatsky time, and we're talking that sort of information. So it's quite old in terms of Pythagorean, basically, from the mystery schools. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kate.
Sue Mann's got a hand up.
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
That's in your hand. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put the light on.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you.
So I think it's one of those ones where I haven't exploded yet with all the information. But do you use complex numbers? And so you said it's mathematical. So do you use equations and do you use
No,
angles?
no,
Do you
I
combine
don't.
it with dowsing?
I sometimes do, but I just basically stick with what the numbers tell me.
So your number bias is numbers
Mm.
first.
It's numbers first, yeah.
And just a single number. Oh no, but you're
It's
talking about the years, so
it's the numbers that I'm asked to look at. So it'd be either the numbers through somebody's birthday, birth date,
oh I see,
somebody's
yeah.
name,
Okay.
the house they might want to buy, the road it's in, the business they might want to invest in, what that is. It's numbers and how that equates to letters as well as the numbers themselves.
Okay.
I
Do
don't
you
really
use
do the
yeah.
sorry, I don't really do the dowsing. I don't do any complex maths. I'm not very good at maths, so I stick to the
Okay.
numbers of symbology.
So do you do prescriptive healing with numbers?
I don't do
Does
with
that
numbers. I'm a Reiki master teacher, so that's a different ball game. And I work with sound, I work
Okay.
with color, but not. But the
So
numbers do have. I mean, you know, some people will have in their having a reading, they will find some of that information very helpful, which will be healing in a manner of speaking.
oh yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It's just it's one of those other areas which is sparking me off right now.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being sparked.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Can I just
Pleasure.
ask, Kate, do you have a website or
No,
something?
I did have, and unfortunately, it has gone the way of websites that haven't been kept up. So I've put on your thing, I've put my Facebook page because that is the best way of seeing what I'm doing. Because I put what I do on my Facebook page, and then you can see pictures of whatever it is I'm up to, and mostly, you know, pictures tell a thousand words. It's better than having a sort of a full lengthy website, which I haven't got time to then update, whereas the Facebook page I do. So feel free to have a look.